Sometimes with communication skills with students, migrant students or students from other countries and international students, sometimes students say to me, I learned English, but this isn't it. And when I talk to them more about this, they tell me, and we have quite an entertaining time, about some of the Australian colloquialisms that we use and some of the sayings that we have that the students really don't understand. A student told me the other day that one of the colleagues that she was working with was the really dark horse and to look out for that one. And she said to me, I don't understand why somebody talking about a horse in the hospital. So, you know, things like that. The things like euphemisms for wanting to go to the toilet, for example. I want to powder my nose, I want to spend a penny, I want to go to the bathroom, I need to do a wee, I need to pee. All of these things, you know, can be poorly understood by students. So sometimes you need to clarify what a patient or a colleague has said. And sometimes if you're conscious of your own worldview and the way you're communicating with an international student, it might raise your consciousness to the fact that you might need to speak a little more slowly and not use colloquialisms. Another thing that we do quite often is we use a lot of words, and students become confused when we ask them questions such as that has a double negative in it. So for example, you might say, you don't mind if I sit here, do you? So that's, do you mind if I sit here, or you do mind if I sit here? What you're actually saying is, can I please sit here? So keeping sentences short and free of additional words, and especially double negative connotations, is a very useful tool when you're communicating with people who have English as a second or third language. The other thing is sometimes correcting communication behaviours with international students who don't have some of our everyday words in their everyday mother tongue vocabulary. For example, if I asked you, I'd said to you, please would you pass the potatoes? Thank you might become, to another a speaker of another language, pass me the potatoes. And we might find, as Westerners, we might find that that sounds quite rude because there's no please, there's no thank you. That is because very often in a student's home culture, please and thank you don't occur in everyday language. And this is when I get phone calls and I get reports about students being rude or short or abrupt in practice. What that means is that that poor student, if that student isn't taught how people appreciate please and thank you and manners in certain situations, you're going to set them up to fail. So you need to get them to add those words, and you need to get them to say, in Australia, I mean, we think we're very laid back, but actually we really like our manners. So when you tell a patient that he must sit down, or that you're going to take his blood pressure, or that you need him to get out of bed to have his pre-operative shower, that you need actually to put a please, would you, in front of it, and a thank you after it. And interestingly, I had a Chinese student some years ago who was so passionate about this after I'd explained it to her that she made a video about this very thing. And there's a link to this on this website. And we'll put that link up for you. But it's basically her being rude to a patient because of her tone and not saying please or thank you. And then she goes back again and does it again. And there's a much better outcome. So I said to this student, she said to me, it's very important that students from China know this because otherwise everyone will think they're rude. So I said, okay, so we'll make this video. So if you have a student or a colleague indeed, who people are saying to you, that person is very rude and abrupt, and you hear them and you think, I think that's because they're not using those words, please and thank you. Then it's a very good idea to say, now in Australia, when you ask somebody to do something, you need to ask them in a polite way, and in our culture that always involves a please could you, would you please, thank you very much, please could you, would you, and give them those sentences. Please could you give me a hand. That's another one. I said that to a student, give me a hand. So you think about that for a minute. It's a very common thing that we say, can you give me a hand for a minute? Okay, so you need to think about that and explain what that means to an international student who's learned English, but they haven't learned, can you give me a hand, please? And then they learn that, and they learn to say that. So they will then go up to a colleague or their teacher and say, please could you give me a hand for a minute? So you're actually modelling a behaviour and teaching some sentences which actually help the student to progress.